Hi, I'm Elle and I'm finally back after my short hiatus. As promised, here is a tutorial on how I paint dark skin, so I hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, here we go. So I already have my sketch prepared, and the first thing that I wanted to do was to paint under that sketch layer with a very dark sort of saturated brown colour. There are a couple of things that people tend to struggle with when painting dark skin, and two of those things are one, it's not quite dark enough and you end up painting a character that looks white, or two, you end up painting something that's not saturated enough. It just turns out looking ashy and grey and not as vibrant as it could be. And so I try to avoid that by starting off darker and making it a little bit more saturated. Right here I'm painting in some reds and the whites of the eyes just to add some contrast and some warmth and vibrancy. And then I block in the silhouette of the hair. I didn't need to add too much detail, I just needed the rough outline for now. And once I was happy with the silhouette, I started rendering in the skin. My process for rendering the skin on people with darker skin tones is somewhat similar to how I would do white skin, except I try to make it a little bit more reflective. Darker skin tones tend to reflect light in a different way to white skin. One of the things that I've noticed about darker skin is that it tends to reflect a lot more of the ambient light around us, especially more of the blue and purplish tones from maybe the sky or just the ambient light in the room. And another thing that really seems to help me when picking a mid-tone to just kind of sculpt out the shapes of the face and stuff is to pick a colour that isn't too much lighter than the darker undertone that I have for the base. Next, I play around with the colours a little bit. I settled on a lighter shirt because it contrasts nicely with her skin and hair, but I wanted to keep her eyes darker. I played around with the colour there a little bit and settled on this deeper sort of pinkish purpley colour. A lot of the sort of unnatural eye colours that I see characters have, they're always more in the sort of lighter, vibrant tones. I just wanted to play around with a darker kind of unnatural eye colour, and I think it turned out quite well. And then I added in my usual sort of warm bounce light onto just under the brow bone and towards the bottom of the mouth. And then I just add in that sort of warm bounce light that I like to give to a lot of my characters. I feel like it just makes the face look a little bit more three-dimensional. I kept it in the mid-tones because it's not going to be as strong as if it were coming from a direct light source. And then I went into the curves function to play around with the different values of the piece, but she ended up looking too white, so I undid it and just decided to paint in manually this time. When you use the curves function, it can be really easy to have a character that is intended to be a person of colour that you just accidentally end up whitewashing throughout the process. So yeah, that's why I decided against doing that. So that's why it's really handy to be just conscious of the changes that you're making throughout a piece when drawing someone with darker skin, because it can become really easy to very quickly and unintentionally whitewash them. So then I muck around with the proportions of the face a little because it was looking a little bit wonky, and then I use an add layer to start trying to add a direct light. Like I said before, darker skin tends to be a lot more reflective than white skin, so I tried not to blend out the direct lighting too much. I decided to go for a backlit sort of lighting in the end. I felt like I just like how it looked coming through the sides of the hair and stuff on the back of the neck. So I muck around with the colours of the background for a little bit, but ultimately I don't keep that. I go back to the goldish sort of background, but one good thing to come out of it was I mucked around with the skin, reflecting back a little bit, just a little bit more of blue light, and it just added a little more touch of realism because darker skin definitely reflects that sort of blue ambient lighting back a lot more than white skin does. Then I just start sculpting out the face a little bit more and just getting stuck into the rendering, adding more detail around the lips, to the lips, around the nose, the eyes, adding the sort of juicy colouring to those, defining the jawline a little bit more, and just all around having fun with it. Rendering is my favourite part of the process, and just painting in manually, I tend to go into this really comforting zone. What's your favourite part of the process though? I know there are definitely people out there that don't like rendering. Now I decided to give her some earrings because she's got those really sort of cute droopy styled elf ears that I tend to like a lot. I wanted to play around with how an elf with that ear shape might actually pierce their ears and what kind of jewellery they would wear. I've never seen this style of earring done before, but if it already exists and another character has it, feel free to drop that in the comments. I'd be interested to have a look. So I rendered for a lot longer. The full time lapse will be up on my Instagram if you want to see what happened between then and now, but I'm just adding in some more texture into the skin with a textured brush that I got from Canliu's brush set. I find that it really just elevates the piece and makes it look a lot more painterly when you add a little bit of texture over all the airbrushed skin that I tend to like to do. It just kind of stops it from looking a little bit too digital and airbrushed. I really appreciate digital art that has a lot of texture and kind of looks like you can see brush strokes over the top of it. Yeah, so I like to add that to my pieces, and if you would also like to make your pieces look a little bit more painterly, you can definitely add that texture at the end over the top of a more sort of smooth airbrushed piece. And after rendering and rendering and rendering, I mucked around with the background a little bit. Again, you can see that in the full time lapse, but I ended up with this. So that is my current method on how I paint darker skin tones. I'm definitely not a pro at it yet, and I still have a lot to learn. So I'm going to have a few different tutorials linked in the description below. It's going to be a little bit of a mix of digital and traditional, but I hope you find something informative in those videos if you also want to learn how to get better at painting dark skin. Thank you for watching, and until next time, bye!